It's no secret that Greece is one of the world's premier travel destinations. Athens, the Peloponnese, the towering monasteries of Metora, and many Greek islands attract roughly 30 million tourists a year. However, there is more to Greece than these popular destinations, and Kastoria is one special city that is often overlooked. Kastoria is in the northwest corner of the Greek mainland near the border of Albania. It is located on the isthmus of a peninsula that sits in the middle of Lake Orestiada in Greece's Macedonian region. This remote gem is well off the beaten path in this magical country, but it is well worth the visit. Like the rest of Greece, it not only has stunning natural beauty and great food, but also a rich history and many old monuments of its past surviving into the modern age for us to explore and enjoy. During the classical Greek era, the city of Kelytron was nearby on the southern shore of the lake. The Romans acquired it by defeating the Macedonians around 200 BC. It would eventually be refounded as Diocletianopolis after the emperor of the 3rd century AD. It was a prosperous city and even the seat of a bishopric as the Roman Christian era began what we now colloquially call the Byzantine Empire. As an aside for my viewers that may be confused by these terms in this and my other videos, the Byzantine Empire is the late Eastern Roman Empire that was predominantly Christian, predominantly Greek-speaking, and had its capital in Constantinople rather than in the predominantly Latin-speaking Rome itself, which by this time wasn't even the capital of the Italian peninsula. It is the same state, and nobody called themselves Byzantines. They wouldn't even know what you were talking about if you called them that. They simply referred to themselves as Roman, and they didn't see the distinction. The term Byzantine was constructed in the 1500s by a German humanist and is based on the original name of Constantinople, which was Byzantium. I use these terms interchangeably, but just so you know, the Byzantine Empire and the late Roman Empire are the exact same thing. While the city was in a good location for trade and commerce, it suffered from being exposed, which became a problem once the empire's borders began to be penetrated by barbarians. After multiple raids by barbarians in the 4th and 5th centuries, it was gradually deserted and the inhabitants moved to the more defensible peninsula isthmus under Emperor Justinian, who, in a fit of inspiration, named the city Justinianopolis. Diocletianopolis, Justinianopolis, good God, these Roman emperors had some real ego. To the point of being funny, I actually found 17 cities in the empire by the name of Justinianopolis, and there's probably even more. It's just, I guess you have to have a big ego to be a Roman emperor. Anyway, now the inhabitants moved to this more defensible position as the width of the peninsula at the isthmus was less than 370 meters or about 1,200 feet. Here they built a substantial wall and a wet ditch that essentially turned the peninsula into an island that would pose significant problems for any would-be invader. These defenses allowed the city to thrive again, and it would become an important city for fur trading. In fact, this is where the city got its new name, Kastoria, in the 9th century, which basically means place of beavers, from the Greek word for beaver, Kastori. I guess having 17 cities named Justinianopolis just got too confusing. The area is still known for its fur trade and hosts an international fur exhibition annually. There are still over 200 fur dealers in the city and its vicinity. As a cautionary tale, the European beaver, Castori, from which the city gets its name, is now extinct in the area and the local industry focuses on mink. The city developed with wealth owing to its lucrative fur industry and the protection the lake and the peninsula provided. In addition, the lake provided fish while the surrounding area was good for grazing and had abundant game. Castoria was known for its quality artisans, and they created a substantial amount of art and built many churches full of frescoes and icons. Over 72 churches once exist in the city, of which 54 have survived, including 12 from the Roman period. Some of these were community churches, while some of the smaller ones were the personal chapels of noble families and wealthy merchants. While many of the frescoes succumbed to the ravages of time and leaky roofs due to the inability to provide adequate maintenance during certain periods of time, many of the delicate frescoes have been preserved and can be viewed today. Some of these monuments still conduct services, keeping them alive in a sense, providing an important connection of the modern inhabitants to their ancestors. Here in the still active church of St. Nicholas of Theologina, the frescoes that were painted in the 15th and 17th centuries still survive. St. Nicholas is a good example of the churches that were built after the Ottoman conquest, showing the local Orthodox population was still very active. While they ceded some of the great wealth and prestige of the Byzantine period over to the Turks during the occupation, They were able to continue their culture and art to a high degree compared to many of the other occupied cities under the Ottomans. The city would change hands several times in the Middle Ages. It would come under control by the Bulgars in the 10th century, who would be pushed out by the Byzantines in 1018. The Normans would gain control in 1082, only to be pushed down by the Byzantines a year later. In the 13th and 14th centuries, it would go back and forth between the Bulgars and Byzantines. By this point in history, the centralized power emanating from Constantinople was intermittent, as the city had its own problems to contend with from palace intrigue, Arab sieges, and the Crusades. In the 1300s, the Serbians took advantage of Roman infighting and gained control for some time, since Constantinople was distracted and the Serbian nobility intermarried with Byzantine nobility to lend some legitimacy to the situation. The last ruler of the city of Serbian descent was Thomas Pjubović. He was not well liked and was in constant conflicts with the Greeks and Albanians in his realm. He had a reputation for atrocity and even referred to himself as the Albanian Slayer after mutilating captives and/or selling them into slavery. He also dealt with the Greeks savagely when he believed them to be conspiring against him. Eventually, enough was enough, and his wife, whom was descended from Byzantine nobility, and a group of conspirators had him stabbed to death by his own guards. And the guy must have been a serious a-hole, since basically everyone around him, including family and friends, wanted him dead. If you watch my video on the Byzantine church in Korça, Albania, the Church of Christos Udotis, or Kisha I Vristozit, you may remember the Albanian noble family Muzaka, whom under Roman court titles, ruled a vast despotate stretching from western Greece to the Adriatic coast of Albania. They took control of the city, but this was during a time of Turkish Ottoman expansion, and they would be the final Roman rulers of the city of Kastoria before it would finally fall to the Turks in the late 14th century. The family has a small church in the city, the Church of St. Athanasius of Muzaki. This is a relatively simple structure compared to the architecture of some of the churches built when the empire was in better health. However, it has a beautiful interior with brilliant frescoes. Some of them are quite unique as they depict Jesus and the Virgin Mary wearing imperial garments for the first time in Christian iconography. The frescoes also depict some non-military saints in military dress, perhaps a sign of the turbulent times. There is also a depiction of St. George in a cloak with a double-headed eagle with a star, like the one that was awarded to Muzaka by the emperor for being victorious over the Serbs. This was perhaps to portray how important the family was to the emperor. None of this was considered normal in Byzantine iconography. The Ottoman Turks took control of the city in 1385. There is speculation that the Muzaka made a deal with the Ottomans to spare the city an inevitable bloody fate by handing it over with conditions and protections. Perhaps because of this, the Ottomans allowed self-governance, and the supreme authority of the city became the Orthodox Metropolitan Bishop. The city's beloved churches were spared the fate of being converted into mosques, and the inhabitants continued to build new churches and engage in the arts and crafts of their ancestors. Therefore, the city continued its reputation for making exquisite Byzantine-style frescoes and icons, despite the empire being merely a memory. Castoria became a multicultural city hosting people from all over the region, and even included a significant Jewish community. Many of the beautiful homes and mansions in the Ottoman style still grace the city, adding to its unique flavor. There is also Kursun Mosque, that was undergoing restoration during my visit. Of the 7 mosques, it is the only one that survived after the Ottomans were expelled. There is also an Ottoman madrasa in the city near the defensive wall that is in a state of preservation, though a little bit neglected. This isn't too much of a surprise since the inhabitants focused their energy on preserving old churches rather than the monuments of their former overlords. Thus, many Ottoman structures were demolished in order to make room for new buildings. Unfortunately, Castoria suffered during World War II and the Greek Civil War, and the town sustained significant damage in the fighting. Further, the significant Jewish population of over 900 people were rounded up and eventually sent to Auschwitz, where they were gassed by the Nazis. Those who weren't arrested fled and hid or joined the local partisans. By the end of the war, only 35 Jews remained in the city. Due to migration and death, by the late 20th century, almost the entire population of the Jewish community has disappeared from Castoria. Despite the city's tumultuous past, it has survived with many of its cultural monuments intact. Modern construction has been somewhat haphazard and degraded some of the city's character that survived into the 20th century. However, it is still an extremely charming place to visit and offers many opportunities for recreation, cultural, and culinary experiences. It is hard to walk around the town for more than a few minutes without running across a historical structure, and the city boasts a museum of Byzantine art that showcases some of the very fine examples of Byzantine icons. It also displays many of the icons that were made under the Ottoman yoke, when partially thanks to Castoria's unique status, the artisan masters continued the Byzantine tradition and taught new students, preserving and perpetuating the craft despite the occupation. Castoria boasts a beautiful waterfront promenade that is full of cafes, restaurants, and tavernas, offering a wide selection of food and drink. The local residents are very friendly and welcoming. I unfortunately ran out of time to see everything I wanted, including a 1,000-year-old monastery and some inviting hiking opportunities, but it was an amazing visit. I am definitely looking forward to get back as soon as I can. Thank you very much for watching my presentation of Castoria, Greece. It was hard condensing so much history into a video like this, so much gets left out. Let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in more thorough content of some of the city's sites or if you have any questions. At any rate, I hope this provides the casual traveler with an overview of the city's history, providing some context and making your visit more meaningful. Also, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe on YouTube. It does a lot to help me make more content like this and preserve some memories from our distant past. Thanks again. Adios.